Welcome, welcome. We have more interviews coming. In fact, we had two more professors booked. Right now, I was just on the phone and following up with emails. But we also have another question answered, not a full interview, but at least a question answered from another expert who's done a study and studied this topic and used to be one of the foremost experts on political polarization in America in the past. And we were able to get a hold of this person and ask him a critical question. Today, the question is with Professor Jane Mansbridge. She is a professor of political leadership at Harvard University. Jane Mansbridge, professor of political leadership, Harvard University. We wanted to talk to her because she wrote a couple articles, The Polarizing Crisis in the U.S. and the Future of Listening, and also an article in the Washington Post, 3 Reasons Political Polarization is Here to Stay. One question with Jane Mansbridge, professor of political leadership, Harvard University. She was the Charles F. Adams Professor Emerita, John F. Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University. She was the Adams Professor of Political Leadership and Democratic Values. She became Emeritus Professor, and then she was Normal Professor. Then she was a regular Professor of Public Policy at Harvard up to 98. So from 98 to 2020, she was at Harvard University. 91 to 96, she was at Northwestern University. Actually, back to 91. Then she also did a little bit more at Northwestern. Then she also did a visiting professorship at Santa Barbara and an assistant professorship at the University of Chicago. So Harvard, Northwestern, Santa Barbara, and Chicago. Very well-educated person. She wrote these 2 articles. She also wrote another chapter in a book that we saw, but we felt that these articles were more relevant. The Polarization Crisis in the U.S. and the Future of Listening. Strong Democracy in Crisis, Promise or Peril, in 2017, 5 years ago. She also wrote in 2016, 3 Reasons Political Polarization is Here to Stay. So at the end of Obama's second term is when Professor Mansbridge is saying, polarization is so horrible. How are we going to deal with this as America? So 2017, 2016, she's saying polarization is so horrible. How are we going to deal with this, America? That's why she wrote an opinion article about how bad it is in Washington Post. That's why she did an academic study, The Polarization Crisis in the U.S. and the Future of Listening at Harvard. And I asked her one question based upon her research. I only wanted to ask you one question. Do you think political polarization has increased since you wrote your chapter? The chapter of this book she wrote around 2016. So she wrote the chapter of this book at the same time that she did these 2 articles. These 2 articles and the book chapter are all on the same thing. Congress basically couldn't operate anymore. I believe Obama's second term was the least productive Congress in American history ever. By that, they mean they had the least amount of bills signed. So they weren't able to agree on anything. So she was looking at the massive breakdown of Congress being able to function and get anything done during Obama's term, and that it was basically the worst America had ever seen. She's like, wow, this is so polarizing, least productive Congress. The president and Congress can't agree on anything. They can't get anything done, super polarized. And this is before Trump's elected. She's saying, wow, it's bad, right? Actually, 2017, Trump got elected. So she's starting to see the end of the Obama period, 2016, and she's starting to see Trump in 2017. So she's seeing the polarization of Congress, can't get anything done. The budget is shut down during Obama. And then Trump comes and he's even worse. Right. So that's where she was writing her articles. Polarization in Congress with Obama, and then Trump comes and he really splits the country. But she hasn't really studied the subject in 5 years. So my question is, looking back at the last year of Obama's presidency and the first year of the Trump presidency, before January 6th, before Charlottesville, when Trump said there's people on both sides, before any of that, you're just beginning to see Trump. Is it better or worse than that? Oh, yes, I think it has. Has political polarization increased in the last 5 years since the end of the Obama administration and the first year of the Trump administration? Yes, I think it has. I know, not a full interview, but she did write these articles. She was an expert on political polarization 2016, 2017. She was writing in another email to me. She hasn't really studied it since then. She's one of many professors who looked at this subject and then never returned to it again because they were depressed by how well it's going. But she was an expert 2016, 2017, and she's saying the situation is worse now than it was the first year of Trump's presidency and the last year of the Obama administration. So that is from a definitive expert, one of the most educated people out there, a Harvard leader, saying polarization has definitely increased in the last 5 years. Another expert confirming that based upon the research and the point in time, that things have definitively gotten worse from that point. We'll bring you more information in the future.